Black Armory released about a week ago now, and we've gotten a little taste of what's within this content drop. While it's still very early, I wanted to share my first impressions on the first of 3 releases included with the annual pass. As of the recording of this video, the first 2 forges have been released, so we'll talk about those in a bit, as well as the community's reaction to the new content, Bungie's response to said community, and we'll address what Black Armory really is. I'll give you a hint, it's not an expansion. Leading up to the release of Black Armory, we knew very little about this new format Bungie was planning on delivering. I had a hard time of gauging the size of this non-traditional DLC myself. In the past, as many of you know, the smaller expansions that have come to Destiny have usually been very okay. Things like Warmind, for instance, were actually pretty good, and along with some much needed updates, pushed the game in a much better direction. Whereas things like Curse of Osiris really didn't add anything special to the world. Historically, the 2-hour campaigns that arrived with each of these expansions never blew anyone away. They felt rushed, and probably because they were. Making a campaign takes a lot of resources. You have to design entire levels, with some parts of the level that players will never see or set foot in again. You need a bunch of voice actors, you need exciting moments with in-game characters and cinematics. You need tons of people, animators, artists, modelers, just to create a single engaging story mission. These things take a lot of time, and not having the proper time to work on a campaign really shows. Hence why the biggest complaint since Destiny 1 has been the campaigns suck. Remember when every other comment on a Destiny video or post was, "The story sucks and the campaign is garbage"? I sure do. So Bungie decided to make a call that I've really been looking forward to. And that was cutting down on the story and removing the traditional campaign experience from the smaller releases. I really respect Bungie for making this decision because I do think it is the right move. Honestly, how many of you were excited to go back and replay any $20 DLC campaigns since Destiny 1 launch? I certainly wasn't. So they removed the campaigns and opted to focus on endgame experiences with a semblance of a story thread throughout it. This got me excited because endgame experiences are what make Destiny, Destiny. Things like dungeons, the Shattered Throne, and the Whisper mission, activities like Escalation Protocol, Blind Well, Court of Orcs, Archon's Forge, Prison of Elders, and raids and raid lairs. Endgame activities are the reason people keep logging in and playing the game. No one is logging in to watch Panoptes try and destroy the universe a second, third, or even 4th time, trust me. So for the new format, the annual pass they're calling it, is a new way of delivering content to the game. Like I mentioned earlier, many of us really had no idea what a content drop was going to look like in comparison to an expansion. And partly because of Bungie's marketing, and partly because of the community's expectations, it was hard to know how to feel about the new stuff. Was I excited and curious? Sure, but not to the level of previous releases because I was more confused than anything. I got chills after seeing the first Curse of Osiris teaser. And we all know how that turned out. So to say I was tempering expectations is kind of an understatement. Bungie waited quite a long time to really shed light on the details of this kind of experience they were delivering, and it probably caused a lot of people to fall into that wait and see mode, which I totally get. But now it's here, and we've got endgame experiences rolling out over the course of the next month. The community's initial reaction, as you probably have seen, was quite negative because of something I agree with entirely. And that was making the very first activity have a high power level requirement, meaning you had to grind your face off if you wanted to play it right away. This is a contrast to every other day one of new content we've had in the game, and I feel like it was a pretty big mistake on Bungie's part to go ahead and make this singular activity require more grinding on the very first day. Typically, when a new expansion or content drop releases, Bungie offers some sort of boost to help those players who haven't been keeping up with the daily grind of the game and allow them to jump into the new content immediately. This was not the case for Black Armory. If you didn't hit 600, there's no way to really play the new activity at all, and for those of us who did hit 600, we had to do more grinding as well. The way Bungie could have improved the launch was if they released the new power level update a week earlier with the release of Season 5, so that people could get a head start on leveling, and even provide an easy way for casuals to reach 600 at the start of a new season. But I understand the new content is endgame content, and wasn't made for casuals, but rather for the more hardcore enthusiast, and it's not something someone new to the series should just jump into. It's more of an extension of the Forsaken endgame, so in simple terms, it's more grind. Thankfully, Bungie quickly realized their mistake and almost immediately lowered the power of the activity by 5 per round. So instead of facing 610 enemies on the first round, you're only facing 605 enemies. This may not seem like the biggest change, but it actually makes a huge difference when you're still leveling up. So much so that during one of my streams last week, I was able to beat 2 Volunder forges with random strangers in matchmaking. This change made the new content more accessible and actually allowed people to play the stuff they paid for, while still preserving the difficulty of the activity. Props to Bungie for the quick server-side fix. Let's hope more changes can be made this fast in the future. So, let's talk about forges, of which there have been 2 released so far. They are 3-man, 3-round horde mode activities with matchmaking, and some light mechanics set in a pretty neat location. You kill blue guys so that they drop batteries, throw those batteries into the forge, charging it up, and you do that for 2 rounds and then face a boss on the 3rd. These forges are the center of the content here in Black Armory. So how are they? Do they feel like endgame activities? Are they fun? Are they creative? What's your overall review? They're pretty okay, honestly. They're nothing crazy, and they're certainly not groundbreaking activities, and they don't exactly push the bounds of the series. This probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're match-made activities, meaning Bungie knows most people aren't there trying to figure out raid-level difficulty mechanics, and rather just shoot aliens in the face while doing something simple that doesn't take much brain power. That said, the forges are both pretty fun and challenging. At least for right now. Which actually leaves me with my biggest question: will these forges still be relevant in a few weeks? What will they have to offer when we're all 650 and can steamroll them in a mere few minutes? Part of me has a feeling like the forges aren't exactly an endgame activity, which definitely worries me a little bit about the future annual pass content. I'm already very satisfied with my auto rifle and machine gun roll, and it's only been a week. But the question I posed earlier is not something we can answer right now. We'll have to wait and see what this content is like when the new year hits. Outside of the forges, there's the whole weapon frame quests, exotic quest, bounties, some forged secrets, and the scourge of the past raid. The raid looks fun, as I'm sure it is since the team never disappoints there. But in terms of things to do that isn't raiding or forging, there isn't much, sadly. I find myself just going through the motions of the same old stuff, which is unfortunate, especially since the quest for each weapon frame and the hour-long quest to open the Gofanin Forge requires farming Fallen in Patrol and farming powerful enemies and killing some beefed up bosses in lost sectors. These super grindy quests aren't supposed to be super exciting. Obviously it's filler in between the actual new activities. But when there isn't too many new activities to actually play, these quests become a little less bearable. It will be interesting to judge the content as a whole once everything has released, but right now I have to say I am a bit disappointed at the sheer amount of Eververse cosmetics versus the lack of new armor and weapons. Out of everything, that's probably my biggest complaint. The story is okay so far. Again, nothing out of this world, but I do really like the vendor Ada-1. Her whole thing is whether or not she should trust the Guardians, and while she would very much like to have her forges reclaimed, she's not entirely sure if it's right to let us run around building Black Armory weapons. She's very conflicted, and for so few lines of dialogue, I think her character development is actually not that bad. She also looks very cool. The design of her character and even her voice are all fantastic. Even though the story is light, I am still invested in learning about the secrets of the Black Armory and the 3 families and what happened to them. So, is the annual pass worth getting right now? I would say no. And the reason? Because content is still being released. Until everything has come out, we can't really get a good look at the new stuff as a whole, and so it's very hard to judge from only having a few pieces available. One thing to keep in mind is Black Armory, along with Joker's Wild and Penumbra, is not an expansion. And it's something we have to try and wrap our heads around when comparing this content to previous releases. A lot of us were expecting new strikes, new Crucible maps, a bunch of new exotic armor, and the whole 9 yards, but that's not what this content is. This content is designed to be replayable endgame experiences, like the Forges and the Raid, with pursuits such as the new Blacksmith Seal, the new Annual Pass Collections Badge, the exotic quests, stuff like that. It's not game-changing content people are drooling over like the Dreaming City or Shattered Throne, although I'm still secretly holding out that the Niobe Labs turns out to be a dungeon of some sort. The big $40 expansions are where Bungie can push the boundaries of the franchise and the genre. It's where we get epic stories and crazy all-new activity types like Gambit. The annual pass is not that. It's simply for collectors and enthusiasts who enjoy the grind and want the game to continue to be their hobby and want things to look forward to every week. I think at the very least, Bungie has done a fairly good job of having things to be interested in on a weekly basis. One thing I think Bungie could do to really improve the game is really start to go hard on quality of life updates and answer or provide fixes and solutions to hot topics in the Destiny community right now. Things like adding more perks, allowing year 1 armor to have random rolls, create some incentive to replay old content like the Leviathan raids, adding strike-specific loot, removing RNG from titles, add more exotic catalysts, stuff like that. With content being on the light side, their best move is to keep improving the game because making constant updates will only make the Black Armory content more enjoyable. This is one of the biggest reasons Curse of Osiris failed, besides the DLC just being kind of lackluster, is the game needed quality of life updates more than anything, more than new content. When Curse of Osiris dropped, we didn't get any substantial quality of life updates. No sandbox changes, no big fixes for any problems we wanted, which only made the expansion less enjoyable. So if you're on the fence about Black Armory, wait until everything is released and I'll more than likely make a follow-up video to this one if it does well. Final thoughts, I don't think Black Armory or the annual pass is a success or a failure at the moment. Like I said, it's very hard to gauge where this content drop will land on the success scale of Destiny content because it is something brand new to the series. And even if it fails, at least Bungie had the guts to change up the formula and try something new. And I'm enjoying it. There's things I hate, there's things I love, but we'll see how it shapes up in the coming weeks. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you all very much for watching.